Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for attending our emergency financial management partnered with the USO Pathfinder program. If you guys have any questions, there's a Q&A section in your webinar that will allow you to ask any questions along with the Zoom webinar chat. Can you guys hear me okay? You guys could just type in the chat box so I know you guys can hear me. Perfect. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, guys, we get started here. So the reason why we're doing this class is there's a lot of things that are happening around the country right now, especially with the coronavirus and the financial impacts it has. So we're going to be talking through a couple different things, give you guys a little bit of background about myself. So I'm vice president at the Federal Savings Bank, where I specialize in helping folks buy homes across the country. And I've also been doing a lot of housing or budgeting and credit seminars for the last year with the USO Pathfinder program, along with nonprofits. Now, what's going to be a little bit different about our class today is typically when we do this budgeting and credit seminar, which now is a webinar, we normally talk about saving, how to mitigate any potential emergencies that come up. But today it's going to be a little bit different format. Normally we wouldn't be talking about some of these things, but right now we are kind of in a emergency mode. What we're going to talk about today is going to be just really understanding and navigating the different financial options that are available to you. Right now, when you look at the landscape, you have a lot of different information that's out there. So today, the seminar is not really going to give you all the information that you need, but it's going to allow you to know where to search for the resources, because they're changing day by day, especially with the stimulus package that just came out, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. The agenda for today is just really what's happening today. What options do you have for debt relief and deferments so it doesn't impact your credit? We're going to talk about if there's issues, what those issues will look like with your credit. We're going to talk about budgeting. We're going to show you an example of what a budget looks like, and I'll be sending this PowerPoint along with the budget to you guys. We're going to talk about accessing cash and reserves and knowing just kind of how can you access those things and what are your options and also the consequences. And then we're going to talk about opening new credit, which is, again, something that we normally don't cover, but I'm going to walk you guys through how you should be looking at that, when you should be doing it, and then also just how to prioritize some of your bills as you're going through this. So as we know, the coronavirus is affecting a lot of things. It's affecting income stability, the overall financial stability of families, along with credit stability. The next section after this one is really going to be focused in on how to protect your credit. It takes a lifetime to build credit, but overnight you could pretty much lose your entire credit history. And it takes a while to recover from that. People have been faced with unemployment, and right now we're at record numbers. Right? We still don't know how long this is going to last for and how much of an impact this is going to have. Hopefully it's something that is short, something that we can overcome in the next couple of months, and it'll be back to business as usual. We're facing, more of a challenges now than we did in 2008, 2009. Again, with record unemployment, they're trying to navigate and add as much stimulus packages as possible to keep employment happening, working with small businesses and large businesses, but people are being affected. I'm hearing it now left and right with folks losing employment. If you're unemployed, they've expanded unemployment requirements and have also extended the length of unemployment you can go on. The circumstances under unemployment now have also changed. So prior, you would have to have, if you, let's say, wanted to stay home because you need to do childcare, that wasn't a valid reason for unemployment. For some states and counties and different areas, they are allowing that now because of the effects that it's happening. The requirements are constantly changing, so definitely keep up to date with your local laws. And I'm giving you an example today of from Illinois. There's a lot of information that's coming up that I'm catching that's online, or when I'm listening to the news, I'm hearing like they're pushing out information, but it's not always correct. So always go to the actual county site. I know that right now unemployment offices are probably going to be backlogged just with the amount of information or amount of people that are applying, but just rest assured that they are processing those. And again, those things are being expanded on a daily basis. It's better to jump ahead of the curve. If your employer is communicating this with you, please make sure that you are filing your unemployment as fast as possible and following the steps in detail so you're not delaying any type of unemployment checks that you could be receiving. What can you do? One of the main things that we always talk about, I'm a huge fan of, is immediately budgeting. And this includes micromanage your budget, especially in times like today, understanding where you spend money, where money's coming in from, what's the absolute minimum that you need to make. And this is a critical part of our next step, which talks about how to make deferments, because if you know your budget to the T, from how you spend your money, groceries, medicine, entertainment, not much entertainment going on these days right now, but still, if you have families at home, you still need to entertain them somehow and also feed them, right? So really understanding that part is going to allow you to understand where you are today and then what options you have to make certain sacrifices or deferments on your debt to help you manage your day-to-day budget. Another part that I also like is planning all aspects of your life using a calendar. I think especially, again, in these days, just knowing what your food schedule is, grocery schedule, what you're going to be eating, when people now are staying more and more together, right? When normally people would go to work, kids go to school, they have breakfast, they may have lunch. That doesn't exist right now. So just planning that out so you're not eating the same old thing every day. So now talking about debt relief and deferments. The main thing that we try to go through is the priorities of you. You need a roof over your head. So if you currently have a mortgage, there's emergency relief that has been proposed and passed as of Friday night, which is actually, last night, the president signed in the new bill that's going to be offering emergency relief. Now, mortgage companies are your servicer, right? So this is important to note. All mortgages are sold in the secondary market. The one thing, if you do have a mortgage that's retained, is going to be the servicing rights. The person the company that you're making your monthly payments to is your servicer. That's the person you would contact in order to get any type of relief. If your mortgage has been is transitioning to a new servicer, then you need to contact a new servicer. You would get a mailer at least 15 days prior to the first mortgage payment, which is due on the first of every month, but you have a 15-day window to make that payment. So if your payments, every mortgage is due on the first, but you have a 15-day grace period to make that payment. After those 15 days, you incur a late fee of 5% of the mortgage payment. Now, that doesn't mean you would be 30 days late on your mortgage until you've hit 30 days past the first, including the first, then you would have a negative mark on your credit. Note, you don't want to get to the point where your mortgage payment is due on the first, you have to make the payment by the 15th, and then on the 14th, you decide, well, I can't make my mortgage payment. Now you're trying to go through the process. You have to get ahead of the curve on that. And this is, again, where budgeting comes in hand, because now you have the tools you need and know your budget. So and there's a lot of people that are applying for this. So if you get ahead and say, well, you know what? Hey, after this weekend, I'm looking at that we're going to be short $300 to make a mortgage payment. But we also need to buy groceries, or I need gas for the car. Well, you shouldn't need gas at this point because you're not going anywhere. But you still might need a job that requires that. Or you might have additional childcare expenses because you have a child at home or they have to go to daycare. Now that cost has gone up, you really need to balance that out. Obviously, housing is the most important aspect because you need a roof over your head. But this is why just knowing that budget allows you to know, hey, we need to skip 2 months of payments or this or that's happening. Always review the policy online. Pretty much uh, everybody has some type of coronavirus, COVID-19 uh, display on their site showing you, hey, we have relief options. These are your options. Some companies allow you to make deferments online. Majority of them have you call in. I know that right now, Navy Federal, if you have a mortgage service by them, they are offering 3 months deferment, and they just basically re-amortize, or they take that addition, those 3 months of payments, and they just redistribute them amongst the mortgages, or they're going to be pushing them towards the end, so your mortgage will be extended a couple months. Part of the policy or part of the relief that's coming out right now, though that term hasn't been solidified. So what I see right now, a lot of companies offers 3 months, but that might be extended up to 1 year. They're trying not to have a financial collapse like that happened in 2008, 2009, where that was a completely different story with housing, the housing bubble that happened. But in this case, they're trying to protect as much credit assets as they can by making these options available. Because when this is over, right, when they find a cure or the vaccine and things open back up again, we're going to go back. We should be going back to a normal economy. And then things won't be compounded by all these issues, lates, foreclosures, which right now a lot of states are stopping. Just kind of be aware of that. Again, these policies are changing day to day, especially next week when what happened yesterday is going to be implemented. The government's letting mortgage companies kind of dictate what they want to do right now as far as what options they have available. But again, they are overwhelmed. Hold times are long. But just make sure and see if they have an online way to make a deferment payment. Then, like I mentioned, you need to call the mortgage servicer if they give you the options online. But just be ready. From what I've been reading right now, they are almost immediately doing it without any documentation. But at some point, you will have to provide documentation of your hardship. This could be any type of proof of job loss. We covered this. There is no defined timeline as of right now for how long or how short this is going to be for relief. But again, right now, mortgage companies are offering 3 months. Some companies that I heard, I talked to one person that Caliber is offering 3-month deferment. But if at the end of the 3 months, you have to make a lump payment of those 3 months, which kind of defeats the point. But the service rep told them, just call or just check online day to day because that is changing. And again, some of these deferment policies, without them being fully defined and you take advantage of it too early, you might have lost out on getting some additional help. So again, knowing the budget, knowing how long you can go for making your mortgage payments or everything's financially stable will kind of help you dictate that outline. We talked about the new stimulus package that's in. That's something, again, you guys need to check online. Make sure you go to official government websites to get the information or call your actual service company. Mortgage payments are going to start being due. What is this right now? Start being due next week. So they are definitely in overdrive to figure out all the information they need to get to folks. If you're renting, there's a little bit less relief available, but the main thing to do is call your landlord or property manager, let them know what's happening. A lot of places right now are changing the way evictions work. So we're doing this with the USO Illinois. So I provided some resources for Illinois. As you guys kind of see on here, they've halted foreclosures and they've also halted evictions with what's happening. Landlords are able to apply with the city for any additional payments that you're not making, but they might be able to get some assistance for that. But again, these things are available to people. If you're a landlord, you kind of sit in both of these categories, right? One, you have a mortgage. Two, you're a landlord or a property manager. So what are your options? Again, calling the mortgage company, looking online, seeing if you could defer your payments, be in contact with your tenants to see where they are, and hopefully everything lines up. You could do a 3-month deferment. They could be laid off for a couple months and then it just all equals out. But again, this is something you need to be tracking at all times. Student loans, there's some good news with this. If you go online, they already have a zero interest. They've automatically set all their interest rates to zero for at least 60 days. What that means is that it's not that you're not making a payment, it's that the payments that you're making are all going towards the principal balance of your student loan. So if you have a $10,000 student loan and you're making $100 payments, a portion normally would go towards interest. The other portion would normally go towards principal. But right now they've changed it where all your money is going towards principal reduction. So if you paid $100, your balance would be $9,900 now. The other option is they have an emergency forbearance that lasts at least 60 days. You can go to the online site, and again, it's there. It's right on the front homepage. I have a student loan, so this is where I went, and this is where all the information is. Again, you should be checking on a daily basis, checking your budget to see exactly where you are financially and where your money is being spent. Next thing, installment loans. So normally your biggest payment is going to be your mortgage or your rent. And then the second one is going to be your car payment, or if you have any type of personal loan or boat loans. Review the policy online. Some of the lenders are offering, again, automatic deferment. You need to call your servicer. And this is an example from Ally. I have an Ally account, so I just pulled it from theirs. As you see in the middle here, you can defer your payments up to 120 days with just a couple of clicks of the button from online. Because again, they're overwhelmed with people calling, so you're able to do it online. And just double check and see exactly how they're not charging fees, and this won't affect your credit. Now, with that being said, you need to check online. You need to not check online. After you've made a deferment, make sure you keep all proof of deferments. So you, just in case, and then also just in case they mark you as late, but you did opt into one of these relief programs. As this also says, is if you have automatic payments, make sure you turn them off. And then again, this is why also having a calendar is critical, because you can place where all your bills and payments are due, or you can just do it at the 1st or 15th of the month, whatever you choose, depending on how your bills fall in place. But this will be most likely something you need to be tracking on a weekly basis so you understand what the consequences are, along with if they've changed their policies, right? So this says up to 120 days for Ally, but at the same time, this could be something that could be extended. So just be on the lookout for that. Credit card payments, same thing, review the online policy. You're able to make some deferments on your payments. Now, the one thing I do not know is if you make a deferred payment, you might not be able to purchase anything on that credit card. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. So just be careful of that policy. And when you're reading through it, is that if you do need access to some capital, or let's say you have a $10,000 limit, you have $2,000 you owe on there, but you defer your payment, and then they lock you out of your additional $8,000 in credit that you might need. So those are decisions that you need to make and review. And again, with your budget, you're going to understand it and micromanaging your budget. As you guys can tell, I'm very big on budgeting. I budget on a daily basis. Negative credit, if you don't get ahead of the curve, your late could stay as long as 7 years. Now, on a late, let's say if you're late on a mortgage, installment loan, credit card, student loan, that will last a minimum of 7 years on your credit report. Now, the flip side of that is it will stay on your credit, but it won't affect your credit score after 2 years. This also includes collections. That's why normally if you have an old collection and you pay off your collection, your credit score is going to have a big drop in it. The reason is you took an old liability and brought it current. So that's just kind of just some just food for thought, because after 7 years, those things fall off. So if you're at that 5 or 6 year mark, you got to make a personal decision on, does it make sense for me to pay it off? Because if I pay it off, it'll bring my it'll bring that account current. And now again, I have to wait 7 years for that to fall off. The other thing with public records, if you have a foreclosure or bankruptcy, that will be on your credit for 10 years. This is up to 10 years, but it is 10 years that it stays on. We're going to talk about maintaining credit. Like I mentioned earlier, it takes a lifetime to build credit, but it could just take one event to ruin that. Establishing credit, making sure you have your checking and savings accounts and you're constantly monitoring those. Again, with your budgeting, obtaining several credit cards just so you have availability to loans, which would allow you to pay for things. And then just knowing your credit limits. Again, with a budget, you'll know exactly what your limits are and how much money you're spending, and can you pay your credit cards off on a monthly basis. Credit cards could be a beautiful thing if you use your cards wisely. There's a lot of points and different systems available, but not everyone. Some people go in with the intention of, I'm going to get this great card so I get the points and I'll pay off my card. And next thing you know, they're going to be in financial distress because they've overextended themselves, or they took advantage of promo interest rates of 0%, and also all of a sudden those payments skyrocket. Obtaining credit and understanding building credit. Typically, credit cards are going to be, to get the best deals on credit cards, you have to be in that good category. So that's typically that 680 or higher. Anything underneath that, normally your APRs are pretty high. You're also paying annual fees, and then they might nickel and dime you for various things like making online payments, which make life a lot easier. When applying for new credit or applying for credit, really read the terms, the interest rate and fees. Understand if you have to get a secured credit card, you have to put money into the account. You still have to make those payments on that card. It's not like you have a $500 secured credit card. You give them $500, you charge $500, and then you stop making payments. That's not how it works. You'll still have to make your payments on your credit card. And if you're late on those credit cards, it's treated as a late on your actual credit report. So you're actually making a double negative, right? You're not only going to lose the money that you gave them for the $500, you're also going to have a credit blemish on your credit report. And like we talked about before, that can delay out to close out your card if you stop making payments. Then it goes to collection. They keep reviving that collection, and that will be on your credit for a while. So just be tracking that. Don't apply for too many credit cards at the same time. And I'll give you guys some tips on how to apply for credit cards in a little bit. And then again, just knowing your limits on your credit cards and staying within a 30% ratio. So if you have a $1,000 limit, you really shouldn't be spending more than $300 on your credit card. You're probably wondering, well, that defeats the point of having credit if I can't use it. But there's a difference between using it wisely and just maxing out your credit cards. So oftentimes I see people that should have perfect 850, like upper 700 credit scores. But what ends up happening is they just max themselves out on the credit cards. And that alone, even with perfect credit, would cause your credit score to be in the mid 500s. So just be aware of that. The three major credit bureaus is Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. If you don't have credit monitoring, I highly suggest that you guys take advantage of things like Credit Karma. There's plenty of different services. Your credit cards offer those things. So just always be monitoring your credit, especially today where there's virtually no face-to-face meetings. Now, everyone's doing everything digitally. Know who you're working with and make sure that their sites are secure and your information is secure. Now, there's different types of credit that's out there. And we're going to cover that. So one that I like and I use is Credit Karma. They use what's called the VantageScore 3 system. The three major credit bureaus got together and they said, we need to develop a modern credit scoring system. And that's what they did, which is called the VantageScore 3. There's hundreds of different scoring models that are out there. If you buy a car, if you get insurance, credit cards, different credit cards, mortgages, boat loans, car loans, they all have their own credit scores. VantageScore 3 is a good middle-of-the-road credit score. It's pretty accurate with the FICO scores. It's normally a little bit off, but not that much. Your credit cards and your bank accounts will normally be linked to some type of giving you access to credit. They will normally use Vantage Score. If you have like Navy Federal or some of the other ones, I think Discover use Vantage Score, but like some of the other ones, they use FICO scores. So you'll see a wide range on your credit score sometimes. Don't be alarmed by that. If you're trying to buy a house, then I'd be looking at the FICO score system because that is what's going to be used to actually purchase your home. So as we just talked about, FICO scores is what lenders look at. There's differences in the two models. They don't make that information public, exactly what's different. But again, we talked about Vantage scores. It's a credit score that's brought in by all three bureaus. FICO score is is an old system that's over 20 years old. It's kind of outdated, but lenders are still using it. And again, your three credit scores, the Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, you're going to have different scores with each of them. Some might be higher, some might be lower. And the reason behind that is sometimes, let's say you had a collection with Equifax, but they don't report that collection to the other two credit bureaus. So then your one score might be higher, might be a lot lower than the other two. When looking at extending credit, lenders look at stability. Primarily, the consideration to determine stability is your employment history, income history, your residency, and if you have any ownership interest in a home, and how have you established and maintained your credit, along with any type of checking savings account. So I got a quick question for you guys. If you can answer in the Zoom webinar, do you know how much your credit drops if you miss one payment? And we'll just take a quick pause for 30 seconds. I didn't see any answers on the chat, but just so you guys know, it's 70 points on average if you drop your if you miss a payment. So again, it's important to get ahead of this and contact your servicer to make any type of deferments. Late payments, like we discussed before, they stay on your credit for a minimum of 7 years, and they have a negative impact on applying for new credit or better credit cards. When we talk about creating a budget, there's a couple steps to it. So first thing that you need to do is outline your fixed expenses. So normally this is going to be like your installment debt, your credit, or your mortgage, your rent, your car payment, something that you know you have to pay on a monthly basis. This also includes, normally I throw in utilities on fixed expenses because I normally know what the high end of utility bills is throughout the year. And I always use the high mark just so we're not short, because every month that you look at, it's going to change. But again, normally it's something I could put in fixed. You can make some of your variable expenses fixed as well, like food. If you set a budget, and again, this is why having a calendar and knowing exactly what you're going to be eating every day, especially today where you're staying home pretty much all the time, knowing what that budget is, or even if you're going to work and you're in one of those essential businesses, a lot of restaurants are closed or going out of business, and other ones are doing takeout. So, but the more you go out, the more you can expose yourself to getting the coronavirus. So just kind of be aware of that and try to set that as, try to make as much of your expenses fixed as possible, because you have control over that. Medical, you have emergencies, maybe car breaks down, that'd be a variable expense to go into your savings. As you guys can tell, there's a person serving wine. That doesn't exist right now. We always look, when we talk about what your take-home income is, that's going to be your net income. If you get paid $60,000 a year, you make $5,000 a month. Well, you don't make $5,000 a month because you still have taxes. Maybe you're contributing to a 401k. You need to look at what you're actually bringing home net after all your expenses have been paid. Then you're going to look at what your income versus all your expenses, and then you kind of know, hey, this is what I have left over on a monthly basis. Now, there's a couple of different things you can do with that. If you have outstanding debt, you can look at applying your extra cash towards that, or you can just keep that in a savings account. Right now, normally we tell people let's pay down debt as much as possible. But with uncertain times, we switch that to saying cash is king, because you can at least make your mortgage payments, because typically you can't make your mortgage payment or rent payment with a credit card. Setting priorities and prioritizing your bills. Again, this is something that you can do once you have your budget to the T. Shelter, food, and then your necessities like clothing, medicine, etc. Really, you're just reevaluating your wants versus needs, because a lot of folks, you don't need to eat lobster and steak every day. Avoiding impulse buying. That is especially critical at this stage. And like I mentioned before, just re-identifying your wants versus needs. Now I'm going to show you guys an example budget here that I have locked up. Let me just get my little wand. I think I just go through this. So you're going to see up on the top left side, we just put in someone's gross income, what you actually net, so you know exactly what's happening, how much money you're bringing home. Then we're going to go to liabilities. This is more of like your credit cards, right? Where are your credit cards, the balances, the payments? Here's payment date, your available credit, your total credit that you have on there, the ratio, how much you're actually using, and then we have your APR. So you kind of understand, hey, I have a couple credit cards with 0 APR, so I'm not going to be paying massive amount of interest and never paying down my debt. But again, those 0% APRs go away at some point. So you have too much debt on your credit card, it will have a negative impact. And I put a little 30, less than 30, because you always want to be tracking that these numbers minus this one. These numbers here are always going to be at 30% or less, because otherwise your credit is going to have a massive effect. It's going to have a downward effect. Now, you could potentially, which would make sense, is just make sure track if you have to use credit, because whatever your situation is, then you're able to just track where you're at with your credit card. So you might be able to just mix up using some of your credit cards. Next thing you put on here is what are your normal bills, right? You have student loans, cell phone, car payment, rent. You go to the gym, not anymore. But make sure you defer any of those payments that you're not using. Otherwise, you're just giving free money away. If you have gas, if you use gas, if you have to drive, again, this expense might be going down. Credit card payments, utilities, if you have storage, any groceries. Normally, I put that into the fixed expense column because that can be tracked. Here, I just put in 3 months because that's typically what you would want to be in reserve. So how much money do you need left over at the end of the month? On the top right, we just go over what current assets you have. So, hey, am I tracking how much money we're spending? And again, this is where bills are due. So you kind of know when to make the payments, or you can always make payments ahead of time or change payment dates so they kind of align with when you get paid. That's another way to do it. You can make your payments all on the 1st and the 15th and split them up, or you can just make them all at once. If you have retirement accounts, also put that in here. Now, you can access that money, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Your net to debt. So, hey, how much am I netting? What are my expenses? And what do I have left over? And that's money, again, that you can use to pay off maybe a credit card. So in this example here, if you really don't have much outstanding credit, you could just pay off some of the liabilities, and the rest of them you just put into savings so you have some money left over. And I'll send you guys a copy of this budget as well, so you guys are going to have this. So back to our webinar here. How to access cash and reserves. So there's a difference between liquid and retirement. Your liquid funds is your cash or your checking savings and cash in the mattress. So, cash is king. Your checking savings accounts are insured by the FDIC up to $100,000 per account. So you are covered there. May not necessarily always make sense to have cash on hand, especially with the coronavirus being able to stay on money. And when you transfer money between each other or with somebody else, that could stay on there. So really using online payments, credit cards makes sense. Especially like when I just recently went to the grocery store, the checkout folks have protective wear on, and they're using it to swipe your card. You do also have access to retirement, 401k, Roth IRAs, IRA, if you have an old TSP account. Now, again, this is something that we normally don't talk about because you shouldn't be using this money. But if you are in an emergency situation, remember, credit can change a generation. Good credit gives you access to money, student loans for your kids to be able to go to school. Bad, and that also affects your job, right? Or if you're trying to get a better job, having good credit is critical. So those are decisions that you need to look at yourselves. That's yourself, right? Today, I'm telling you what your options are. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you your options so you know what you can do. Can you pull from retirement account? Yes, you can. You can pull money in times of hardship or if you're buying a home, but there's definitely consequences that come with it. I can't stress this enough, giving this type of information out. There are penalties and tax implications involved. This is something, before you make these decisions, you must contact your retirement account holder. You need to contact a CPA, or if you work with someone, let's say H&R Block, just contact them. Let a professional tell you what these consequences are going to be. Even if you got to pay someone 50 or $100 to give you all the advice for taxes, it's well worth it because you could be paying a lot more than that. Another thing to be considerate of, the market has taken a large dip. So this just happened with a client, they had $200,000 saved up in their retirement account. That value has dropped to $120,000. Now they need to pull out $50,000 out of their account. If they do a straight pull of $50,000, it's as if they're pulling out double the amount of money, almost double the amount of money, because the value has lost. And this is something we also learn in pretty much any financial crisis. They basically happen every 10 years or so. That money will come back, right? So people that pulled all their money in 2008, 2009, after the market crashed, that money has returned 3 or 4-fold for folks. If they would have just kept that money in there, they would have made a lot more. But people get panic and they pull money out. The other option you have is you can take out a loan against your own 401k. So you have your money in there. So when the markets recover, then that money will build back up and you can put that money back in. Now, doing these seminars now for the last week, people have chimed in with different things. Now, again, this is something you need to check in with your creditor. Some will allow you to take out money, and as long as you put that money back within 90 days, there's no penalties. Or if you're taking out due to hardship, you might be able to avoid some penalties, but there's also tax implications with that. So just really knowing that. And then if you need cash access, they might be able to work out where they can just auto deduct from your paycheck every month. But again, if you need access to $30,000 to set up savings for 1 year, you're still getting income on a monthly basis from your job. They might be taking out $500 a month from that account, but you at least have reserves set up. Again, that's something that you really just need to discuss with your accountant. Discuss it with the 401k. Can't stress enough to know the consequences. You just can't say, oh, well, this is just what I want to do and I'm going to do it. And then next year comes and you need to file taxes. And now all of a sudden you owe $6,000 you don't have. You already took out a loan against your 401k. You can't take out another loan. You're already in repayment. And then now you have to make a payment plan with the IRS. Now you're paying even more money, or you've extended credit during that process. Your credit score might have dropped. Again, this could be all simply avoided with just budgeting and knowing the reality of your own finances. Can't stress that enough. Ideal savings, 3 to 6 months. Reserves, right now, I think we should be more pushing towards 6 months. You are able to take out personal loans, but just be very wary of personal loans. Normally, they come with high interest rates unless you get really good credit. It's relatively easy to access cash up to $40,000 without really any documentation. It's pretty fast, but just be aware that those typically are going to look like car loans. The rates are going to be in the 8% or higher. Sometimes you can get lucky and get really low rates. And that's something that we might see with personal loans coming up in the next probably 15 to 30 days, just from the larger institutions, just so they can float people along. Again, but they might be offering some other alternatives to like skipping your mortgage payment. But you should still be saving that money, that if you're not making payment, but you're able to make the payment, or hey, I'm short $200 on my mortgage payment, but they're deferring that entire payment. That's just not fun money to go buy whatever you need. That's money you should be keeping, because again, you're going to run out of options at some point, but doing it financially smart, or limiting how you budget, or limiting how you spend is going to make a world of difference. Some people that own homes that have equity in them could get what are called home equity lines of credit. These are they're great products, right? Giving you a quick example of something like that. Let me just get my calculator. That if you want to take out a $30,000 home equity line of credit on your home, providing you have enough equity, you meet all the qualifications. Now, let's just say even if the interest rate was 6% on $30,000, your monthly payment would only be $150 a month. Now that sounds great, but you're not paying any principal down. All you're doing, and that's interest only for the first 10 years. After that, your payment re-amortizes, and the payment's going to be real high after that. So just kind of be aware of what your goals are. It might be a great alternative to paying off credit cards if you have them, or some type of high installment debt. Basically, all you're doing is just reworking how your debt is structured. But if you don't have a plan, and after you restructure your debt, because I've seen this happen too, when we talk to people over and over, this is the goal, this is what we're doing with consolidating your debt. Literally 6 months to 8 months later, they're like, we are in the same spot. Not only do we re-rack up our credit cards, we also have this other consolidation loan that we have on hand. So just, again, micro budgeting, critical. There might be some arguments after this. I completely understand that. But this is something that needs to be faced, and something that needs to be talked about at home. You also have the ability to get a cash out refinance if you have enough equity in your property. The VA home loan allows you to go up to, if you're a veteran and you have a VA home loan, you can go up to 100% of the equity in your property. But again, those are things that need to be reviewed carefully. If you guys have questions on this stuff afterwards as well, please let me know. And like I mentioned, I'll send the PowerPoint out along with the Excel sheet out to everybody. So you're able to pull equity out of your property to pay off debt, re-amortize it over 30 years. But does it make sense to take $20,000 worth of debt, re-amortize it over 20 on a 30-year mortgage, end up paying $45,000 back in debt? Really need to evaluate your options. Opening new credit, why, when, how to apply for new credit. First thing, always be responsible. There's real consequences to being overextended. This is something that I talked about a couple times at this point. That when you, let's say again, you get a $20,000 credit limit. You got lucky on one of the cards. They just gave you 20 grand off the bat. They give you 0% interest for 18 months. And you're like, well, I'm not paying any interest. If I rack up $1,000, I probably have to make that minimum payment of $25. It'd be normally $10, but they don't go that low. So, and then next month you rack up $5,000. And like, oh, well, I'm only paying $50 a month for $5,000. What's the big deal? I racked up $10,000. I'm only paying $100 a month. Well, the problem is that one, if you start increasing your credit past that 30%, like we talked about, utilization rate, your credit score starts dropping pretty fast. You can go from a 750 credit score to a 580, 575 super quick by being overextended. So what ends up happening is that you might be going into the situation thinking one thing, like, oh, it's only $10,000. What's the big deal? Or $15,000. I'm only making $150 payments, $100 payments. Those payments will turn into $500, $600, $700, $800 overnight once that rate's due, because you might have not been tracking it. And then you're going to be extended on your credit. Your credit's going to be low, and you won't be able to get another credit card to do a balance transfer. Just again, be very, very careful of it, and just be tracking your budget. We just talked about that. Why opening your credit can relieve immediate needs. Again, if you can get some 0% interest credit cards, that might relieve some initial debt. But as long as you're tracking, hey, how much money do I really need to spend? Do I really need to spend 1,000? Am I coming in 1,000 short a month? Well, that credit card is going to get racked up real fast. And again, if you get decent credit, it's going to take a big drop. Or is it like, hey, we're short $150 a month. Can we manage, can we cut down on expenses, or we cut down on all expenses? We need a credit card to help immediately relieve that. Looking at credit all the time in my job, you never know what someone's credit's going to be. I have folks that make $40,000 a year but have 800 credit score, and I know people that make $150,000 a year that have 580 credit score. So it just depends on how you manage your money and budgeting. Again, managing money and budgeting is critical. Just because you make more or make less doesn't mean that has an effect on how your credit should be or managing your finances. Again, I've seen people that make $40,000 a year that have a lot of money saved up versus folks that make a lot of money have no money saved up. An easy way to research credit cards is looking at like Credit Karma. They normally give you some recommendations. If you're good credit, again, you can get 0%. When should you be applying for credit? It's a personal question. But that's something you really need to look at. Again, your budget, how you spend your money. These days, back in the day, you used to use a checkbook so you knew exactly what you were spending money on. They went away from that for a good reason. So people could spend a lot more money, and they have been spending more money than they ever have just because there's a lot more options to spend money on. Every time you turn it, I don't watch TV, but I recently got cable just to see what's happening in the world. And it's unbelievable how much money and how much opportunity you have the ability to spend money on. The other thing with this, when should you do it? Again, if you budget, you're not going to fall behind on the ball. When you need things the most, they're not available to you. When you don't need anything, everyone offers you things. But when it's in time of need, you won't have that option. So being ahead, applying for credit when needed, be smart about it. How to do it? So I mentioned you can do the research with Credit Karma, and see what the 0% interest rates are. I highly suggest just going directly to the creditors, directly, like Capital One, Discover, Wells Fargo, Chase. Now, most of these give you the option of being able to see if you have any pre-qualified offers. They do a soft credit check, and then they'll tell you, yes, you've been pre-qualified for a card. Not that you're guaranteed one, but you have a high chance of getting it. That helps with a couple things. One, maintaining your credit score. We talked about because you're not going to have a hard credit inquiry. And if you're pre-qualified and you want to apply for the card, just go ahead and qualify for it, right? Just have your credit looked at. The other thing is you're going to avoid credit inquiries with having that soft credit inquiry. And it just gives you better approval odds. So then again, you're just not wasting time on credit, just running credit checks without any good reason. And if you guys have any questions, you guys can put them in the chat and Zoom box. I'll leave my contact information up. Again, at some point today, I'm going to be sending this out to everybody. I'm going to send a PowerPoint along with the budget template that I have. If you guys have any questions on it, please let me know. There's also a ton of different applications available online, but you are on your phones, but you have to link all your accounts to them. I'm not a big fan of that. That's just, I feel like there's a lot of cybersecurity issues with that. And having an Excel sheet, you have to manually enter it yourself, so it's a little bit more painful to look at your budget. So that's the way I recommend it. Again, if you know how to use Excel, or if you do some tutorials on YouTube, I'm sure YouTube is getting hit up a lot these days. You can just see what different options that are available on there to play around with Excel. All you need to know is two, 3 formulas. Maybe I'll put a video sometime in the next week or two on how to use Excel for budgeting. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, thank you so much for attending and talking with us. Again, special thanks to Justin Miller from the USO Pathfinder program for putting this on together. You guys have a great and safe week. I'll talk to you later.